Hey, what's going on, guys? So today I'm going to show you how to add a oil pressure sensor for a standalone ECU or like an oil pressure gauge in your car, and I'm going to show you where you can install that and what the parts you need are. Hopefully everything you need to know to be able to do this yourself. So let's get to it. Okay, so this right here is your factory oil sending unit. It's pretty easy to see right now in mine because I've got all kinds of stuff taken apart. There's normally a harness plugged into this end right here, and basically this is just an on-off switch. It tells the car if there's a certain amount of oil pressure. I don't know what level this kicks on. I think it's pretty low, but that's what this does right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unscrew this from the block. I'm going to add the oil pressure kit that Science of Speed sells. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so these are the parts that you're going to need. This is the oil pressure sensor kit that Science of Speed sells. It basically locates the sensor off the block with this braided hose right here, and it has some miscellaneous fittings. This is the oil pressure sensor. Here's your part number. It is a 150 psi sensor. Okay, so here's how the parts are going to be laid out. You have this piece. This entire kit comes from Science of Speed. Got this from Amazon. So you're going to take this adapter right here, which is like 1/8 BSP to 1/8 NPT female, and then you're going to go from 1/8 NPT male to this JIC fitting or AN fitting. I don't really know what that is, but that converts from this to this. Your stainless line is going to go to another one of those fitting adapters back to 1/8 NPT female, and that is what the sensor is. So that's how we're going to get this hooked up. And as a side note, this kit does delete your oil pressure switch, the factory one. What I was going to do is I was going to use this fitting here, which would essentially replace this. This would plug into the block, and then the rest of this kit would tee into this right here, and then the oil pressure switch would go right here. But I don't like the threading this into the block didn't feel good, didn't feel right. It probably would have been fine, but it stuck out a decent ways. But I don't trust it, so I'm not going to roll with it. This thing felt almost identical to the factory oil switch here. So I'm going to roll with it the way Science of Speed recommended. I think in the future, in order to keep this switch, I think I'll probably try to tee it in right here. So if I can get a 1/8 NPT T-fitting with the T being a female BSP, I think that's going to be the way to go, because that's going to be offset from the engine anyway. I don't have to have this giant bulk hanging off the engine there, which I didn't like to start with. And yeah, I'll still be able to retain this. But being as I don't have that fitting right now, today, I'm just going to hook it up how Science of Speed recommends and show you guys how to do that. So let's get to it. So the first thing you're gonna have to do is obviously unplug the harness from the OEM sensor here. Mine's already done because I've got stuff torn apart anyway. But after you get that taken apart, I have a 24mm deep well socket here. It's kind of a tight fit here, but basically I'm just gonna take this off the block. It required a decent amount of force to unscrew. And this is what your factory oil sending unit looks like. It has some kind of, it almost looks like a Honda Bond, like they've got some Honda Bond or something on there. So after you have everything removed, you are going to want to go ahead and clean off all the old Honda Bond. Stuff just scrapes right off. You could probably take a razor blade and very carefully, definitely don't gouge into this, but you can scrape that off with a razor blade. Just keep it nice and flat to the surface. Okay, so I'm just going to take the camera off the tripod real quick so you can get a better angle, and you can see that hole right there is the hole we're working with. I've already cleaned it. I've got all the old Honda Bond off, and I have cleaned it with some wax and grease remover or brake cleaner, and I am ready to go ahead and install the kit in that hole. I'm going to put you back on the tripod and get to it. Okay, so up first is this 1/8 BSP adapter that converts it to 1/8 NPT. and per the instructions, it says to apply a light coat of Honda Bond onto these threads before you install it into the block. Be careful not to get it inside of there. I got it a little closer than I would have liked, but that's fine. We'll just wipe it off. And I actually got some of that Honda Bond in there, so I'm gonna wipe that off real quick. Okay, crisis averted. We got the Honda Bond out of there. We are good to go. We have a light coat of Honda Bond on the threads, and I'm just going to thread it into where I've pulled out the old oil pressure switch. Now this is a tapered thread, and this fitting actually had a little O-ring at the end of it as well. So that's another reason why I'm going with this instead of that cheap eBay fitting I got. But between the Honda Bond and the tapered threads and the O-ring at the end, we should be good to go on this. Okay, so we got the next piece here, which is the adapter for the hose, and I'm going to try not to make the same mistake on this one. And I'm going to put the Honda Bond up a little bit higher so I don't have to wipe out the inside of this fitting. But you do want to keep it close to the end because that's where the thread engagement is. Now, the good thing about having that is as you twist it in, it will evenly spread out the Honda Bond, which is what you want. Okay, I've got it finger tight. Now I'm going to grab a wrench and I'm just going to snug these down. It's very important that you don't over tighten this because this screws into the block, and if you screw up those threads, you're going to have a bad time. So get it snug, but don't over tighten it. And there's not a torque spec on tapered threads, so you kind of just have to go by feel. Now I'm keeping in mind here that I've got a pretty long wrench in my hand. I'm getting a lot of leverage. So yeah, I've got it nice and snug. I think we're going to be good with that. You know, it's just good and tight. You don't want to overdo it. Okay, so next up I'm going to go ahead and tighten up this adapter. So I'm going to have this other wrench on here just so I'm not transferring too much of this torque into the block, and I'm actually going to have to get the right size wrench here. 7/16, that's what it is. Okay, so now we got the right size wrench. Let's try that again. So next up we have the hose, the stainless line, and this does not need Honda Bond on it. It is just a regular fitting that seals in there. Depending on where you want to mount your sensor, you're gonna have to think about where you want to put this. So I'm actually gonna mock up where I want my sensor right now before I proceed any farther. Okay, so I would highly suggest before you snug this up right here, the stainless line, that you go ahead and mock everything up at least finger tight and figure out where you want to mount it. Science of Speed recommends you mount the sensor right here. Obviously I have a Mac boost solenoid there. Everything's plumbed up. I really don't want to change it right now. I thought about making a bracket to kind of shift it to the left, and then it wouldn't really change anything over there. But I think the better solution in my case is going to be to tap into this bracket here where the air pump used to be, the air pump box. There was a little air box there. I'm still gonna have to make a little bracket, but it should just be like it should be pretty easy to make, and I should be able to mount the sensor like this. And if I wanted to stretch it, I could probably mount the sensor as is, but you want some slack to be on the hose, on the stainless line, so that when the engine torques, when you're driving, you don't want this to be getting pulled on. That would be bad. So I'm gonna come off of this with a small bracket and basically just mount it to that. I'll show you what I come up with. Okay, well, here's the bracket that I have made. Pretty straightforward. I'm gonna bolt this side of the car. The sensor will go right here. So I think this will work fine. I'm gonna go ahead and get the sensor prepped now. Well, it's outside the car because it'll just make everything easier to do it in this order. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this fitting mounted onto the sensor, and it's gonna be the same deal on this. I'm gonna apply a little bit of Honda Bond. Don't get it inside the sensor, obviously. There you go. double check, make sure there's no debris inside of here, and go ahead and get everything mounted. And to finish it, I'm just gonna chuck it up in my vise here. Okay, so we have this 1/8 NPT fitting attached to our sensor. Now it's time to get everything attached in the car with the new bracket. I have this new bracket. It was just a piece of aluminum, scrap aluminum that I had sitting around, and I painted it black so that it doesn't stand out because it was kind of shiny. So yeah, we'll get all this installed in the car and go from there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and attach the sensor to the plate outside the car. Going to use a spare M6 bolt and nut that I had sitting around. I've got the AEM logo indexed up because why not? I'm going to put a little dab of Loctite on this because I don't want it to work its way loose. Even though this is probably a temporary setup, I don't know how temporary might be, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. You know, sometimes a temporary setup can last a little longer than you initially thought, so I would rather just not have to worry about this rotating or vibrating its way loose. Okay, so we got the sensor mounted up to our mounting bracket. I'm going to go ahead and get this installed in the car. Okay, so here's how this is going to work. I'm just going to take my mounting bracket here, another bolt that I had sitting around, and as you can see, I kind of offset the sensor so that I can get a wrench onto this bolt here. Maybe a bit excessive, but you want to be able to get to the bolt so that it's easily serviceable. And there you go. That is, the sensor is mounted where I want it. And now all I gotta do is get this hose attached and we'll be good to go. These ends don't need any Honda bond on them, so you can just go ahead and attach everything like that. And there's some flex in this cable here for when the engine kind of rotates whenever you are driving. And this is also not completely rigid. I mean, it's not going anywhere, but there's a little play in that if need be. So yeah, now it's just a matter of getting everything nice and tight. These things have a tendency to want to walk in the direction that you're torquing them, so I'm just going to hold it up so that when I torque it, it kind of goes into place where I want it. Okay, so we are all wrapped up here, at least mechanically. We have the adapter fitting going into the block, we have the adapter fitting to the hose, and we have the hose going to the adapter fitting for the sensor, and the sensor mounted. Our custom mounting bracket here holds everything in place, leaves enough flex in the cable, or in the line. So yeah, that is pretty much all there is to this as far as the mechanical side. I mean, different people are going to have different applications for the electrical side. You could go ahead and run this up to your gauge now, or you could run this up to your computer. I'll be running it up to the computer, and I'll probably have a video on that in the future. It won't be solely on wiring up an oil pressure sensor, but it might be included in some of the other stuff I'm doing. I also have my Mac boost solenoid over here that still needs wired. So yeah, the point is this isn't very hard at all to install. I think the one thing that I'm going to probably be changing in the future, I'll probably tee in this OEM oil pressure switch over here somewhere, because I can get a sturdier connection here and I don't have to have all this junk hanging off the block. It can be located remotely. You'll just have to I'll have to make sure that it's actually connected to vehicle ground, because that's what this does. It connects this wire to ground. So I don't know if that would work exactly like this, but that wouldn't be hard to fix either way. But yeah, that is all that I have for today. Keep an eye out for the rest of the videos. I'm getting closer to having this turbo kit done. Just waiting on the valve cover to come back from powder coating, and then just reassembly, and yeah, then get the computer installed and a lot of stuff going on there. But that's pretty much all I have for today. So yeah, thanks for watching.